Hi, BC family. Welcome to your midweek devotion. This week, I want to focus on, I titled it A Courageous Hope, but I want to focus on more so how we can be going through things in our life and have such a peace, such a calm about us, and how we can truly embody that count it all joy when you fall into various trials. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a story of three young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we're going to see how they're able to just hold this calm and this peace through so much hardship. So first, let's back up a little bit into their story. I want you to picture their world. These are three men who love God. They read their Bible. Think of the most faith-filled, dedicated person you know that just loves God so much and God speaks to them. You would assume everything in their life is going well. But what's happened to these young men? The city of Jerusalem has been taken over by King Nebuchadnezzar, super evil. They've all been taken. They've been dragged to the city of Babylon, very evil city, and they've been forced to go now train and learn inside the city, right? So if you're looking at this from that perspective, you got to think, man, they must have had some thoughts running through their head, like, where are we, God? Where are you? But their countenance isn't changing, right? So we're going to jump into Daniel 3, verses 1 through 8. So during this time, King Nebuchadnezzar set up this massive golden statue in the middle of Babylon, and he wants everyone to bow down as soon as they hear this music. And picture how many races are here. It's like so many people from all over are coming. And he said, you're going to bow down when you hear all these instruments play. And he has all these different instruments because of all the different kinds of people that are there. When you hear the instruments and the music play, you bow down and you worship me and my idol. Okay, so you can picture what's going to happen right now. And he said, anyone who does not is going to be thrown into this burning furnace and killed. So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar set up. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, long live the king! You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the horn and the flute and the zither and the lyre and the harp and the pipes and all the other musical instruments. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. So let's pause right here. One, can you hear their tone? These men are jealous. They're ticked off because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're Jews. And can you hear kind of their jealousy? Whom you put in charge. Like, you did this to yourself. You can see that little attitude going on. But also, it tells you that even though Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have been going through it, right? They lost their city. They're dragged to Babylon. God's favor is on their lives because they've been put over these provinces in Babylon. They've been having favor. So catch that. In the midst of the hard, God is still walking them through. So they continue with, they pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance. Also, favor. Because what's the decree? You don't bow down, you dead. Like right then and there. There's no second chance. And yet, here it is, the king extending a grace that should not be extended. One more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you'll be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? So I want you to see their response because this is so important. And there's so many fresh keys to this response. Here we go. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." First, do you hear their courage? Right? The herald proclaims, bow or die. And they say, no, our God is able to deliver us. Talk about a bold hope, a courageous hope. What was their truth? They're trusting God in the midst of hardship, of the unknown. Why are they so calm in there with the king? Why are they able to just be like, no? Because do you hear it in their sentence, in their words? They know their future. They know what is to come. Now, maybe they weren't sure how the circumstances were going to play out or the specifics, but they knew God. What did they know? They knew that God was faithful, and they knew that God was with them. And they had this revelation that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. So even though they're presented with this horrific moment, they have such confidence, such trust in God. They know him on such a personal level that it does not faze them, right? You see, when we know truth about God and we know what he will do, we can find freedom in that place where we stand. They're standing in a hard place with King Nebuchadnezzar, but they have such a peace, such a freedom because they know the truth, right? We can find peace in the midst of our trials. We can find joy in the midst of our hard circumstances when we know what truth we are standing on. This is what they were standing on. This was their truth. Verse 17, let's see it again. If we are thrown into the burning furnace, what did they say? The God whom we serve is able to save us. That's their truth. He will rescue us from your power. That is their truth. They have such a confidence in that. So point number one, God will deliver us. They had this confident hope. They knew this truth. We need to have this hope and this truth of God will deliver us. No matter what you're going through, that is the truth you need to know. God will deliver us. God is able. And then it goes on and talks about how he will. Not only is he able, he will rescue us. That's what they said. Now, did they know how God was going to deliver them? No, they did not. But they had a confident hope that God would deliver them either from the fire, through the fire, or by the fire. But God was going to deliver them. That is a truth that you can stand on. That's where you can stand in the midst of a doctor's report, your finances, your children, your spouse, your circumstances, with such a peace and such a joy because I know God is able and he will deliver me. From the fire is always a great possibility. That's kind of like those miraculous instances where God could have miraculously kept them from being tossed into the fire, right? That's when, someone has cancer and you pray for them and miraculously the doctors are like, I don't see any more cancer. That's being delivered from something, right? But more often than not, God takes us through the fire, through things. Psalms 23 says we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It may not be the path we want to go, right? We all want to be delivered from. That would be great. If Noah could have been delivered from the flood rather than write it out, I'm sure he would have picked it. Okay? God doesn't deliver us from hard things all that often, but he does deliver us through hard things. Why? I like to look at it this way. Our character, our relationships to trials is the same as gold's relationship to fire. It's through the trials that we become more refined, right? Sometimes God doesn't deliver us from something, but he brings us through because he wants us to be transformed, because he wants to maybe even transform someone around us. And we're going to see that in the story too. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is getting so mad because they have this peaceful, confident hope. It's just, he's ticked, right? He sees they have no fear. They have this freedom in their God. They have such freedom in God. And you see it in verse 18 when they say, even if God doesn't deliver us the way we want to, we're not going to bow down. Even if. Did you catch when they said that? Even if. My God will. Even if is such powerful words of faith. What if is words of fear. Uncertainty. What if I stay single? What if my finances don't change? What if my body doesn't get better? What if breeds fear and anxiety, but even if breeds faith. Very important choice of words. Those boys found freedom before the fire. They had a peace that transcends all understanding because they knew that truth in the midst of their situation. God is able and he will. They had that confident hope. So now King Nebuchadnezzar is so mad He has them turn up the furnace 7 times hotter. He wants to ensure that they don't have this freedom. You know why I know that's bothering him, their freedom? Is because then he even had them bound. Like they weren't even fighting. Why bind them? But he had them bound together. Why? He's so like, stop acting like you're free. You're not free. I control you, right? And so it was so hot that the soldiers that brought him to the furnace died. But they finally got these guys in. I always wonder how you do that. If they died, what do they do? Like push them as they died? I'm not sure. So they all get tossed into the fiery furnace. Right? Now, remember, I said that sometimes God brings us through the fire, not only to refine ourselves, but to reach other people. So let's see this in this last part of Daniel 3:24 through 30. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire, unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So the 3 of them stepped out of the fire, and then the high officers, officials, and governors and advisors crowded around them and saw, remember, all those people were there from all over the country, right? And saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads were singed. Their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. And Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no God who can rescue like this." Then the king promoted them to an even higher position than they had. So through them going through the fire, Nebuchadnezzar was touched. All these men from all over the nation has seen God and know who the true God is. So many things in this passage. You know, one of the things I want you to take away as I wrap up here is that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the reason why they can go through the fire is because they were never alone to begin with. That again is their confident hope. We can go through anything because God is in the midst of us, with us. You are never alone in what you are going through. Don't ever let the devil tell you that. God is always with you. Talk to him, sit with him. He will strengthen you and guide you and bring you through untouched. They were not burned. They didn't even smell of smoke, but they had to go through it. And through this, Nebuchadnezzar saw the one true God and who he really was. So this week, no matter what you may be facing, you can have this confident hope because you know where your ending is. You know how this is going to finish out. You don't need to ride these emotions about your circumstances. You can stand firm in those truths. 1, God is able. 2, he will rescue you. 3, he's either going to deliver you from or he's going to bring you through. But even if you go through, he is always present and always with you. Have a great week. Bye.